As a very impartial person myself, and I'll just make this statement before we talk to our guest, Brexit is obviously the biggest mistake this country has ever made, ever will make, and we will rue the day that we allowed people who for whatever strange reason thought, and they're not the majority of this country. When I hear people going, well, the people have spoken, they haven't spoken. In a referendum where you were given a choice without knowing what you were voting for, the xenophobes and some people who have a misguided idea of what the rest of the world has to offer want us to extricate ourselves from the continent of Europe, which we are physically and geographically attached to, whether you like it or not. Let's talk to Daniel Kawczynski, who is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury. It wasn't my...
We have got a friend from there, near there.
Well... Yeah, we've got
another
friends
MP.
Everywhere. Wasn't Derek Conway the MP for Shrewsbury? I'm not sure. I thought he was. Daniel, anyway, very good evening. Welcome to you, sir.
Good evening, and I sincerely hope that you were joking about what you were just saying before.
What was I saying before?
The anti-Brexit diatribe that you've just given the listeners.
I thought we lived in a free country, Daniel. I thought you were permitted to have different opinions and different views. Is that not so?
Absolutely, but your rather extreme perspective is something that has rather got my hackles up. I think that's the expression.
Yeah, no, shackles or hackles, depends whether you're a fan of Ken Livingstone, I suppose. Right, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's see. You obviously, sit on the same committee that is chaired by Jacob Rees-Mogg, who for some strange reason, Jacob is still wearing... Did he... clothes from another era? I don't know.
Well, they are clothes from another era.
They are clothes from another era, aren't they? Yeah. Okay, so tell me the benefits of Brexit, first of all.
Well, look, according to the House of Commons Library, which is an independent, we have given £423 billion to the European Union since we joined. And now I can take you to schools in my constituency with leaking roofs and poor insulation. I can take you to my local hospital where people are still waiting on trolleys and corridors because of a lack of spaces for them in the operating theatre. I can take you to roads with poor infrastructure, potholes. I can take you to all sorts of social problems that we have in our constituencies whilst we are handing over £200 million of British taxpayers' money to the European Union every week. Not every year, not every month, but every week.
No, Daniel, we know that. We know that. And you throw about figures like this, but it isn't an important factor.
I don't use the figure of 350 million,
why not?
Which is a spurious figure. That's
well, why did you use it in the first place?
I objected to the figure at the time.
Yeah? Well, why did it still get used?
Well, because
why did it still get used?
That was the net contribution. That was the
you knew you objected to it in the first place.
We wrote a check every week for 350 million. Now we got some of that money back.
Absolutely.
But the net figure, every week, we hand over £200 million of British taxpayers' money. And I'm just amazed that people like you want to have their cake and eat it.
I find that rather insulting. Don't say people like me. I have a name. You can use my name. If I was to say people like you, I'd rather you call me sir, but okay, Mr. Whale will do.
Well, sir, then, sir. Forgive me.
That'll happen in the knighthoods next time round, I'm sure. There is going to be no easy end to this, Daniel. You must know that giving people a vote on something they didn't really know the consequences of. Now, if you say to me, OK, when we've done the negotiations, when we know what will be the outcome of leaving the European Union, we'll give people a vote again, and they will then be able to decide whether they want to stay or go. I will be quite happy to go with that. But I'm not happy to go with the fact that David Cameron, who should be brought back, by the way, to apologise to this country for what he's done to it, has given people a vote when they had no idea what they were voting for. Now, you know that as well as I. I saw you on Sky today say that it wasn't really about the economics of this. It was more about the fact that we want to get back our own sovereignty, I think was the word you used. Whether it is beneficial to us or not, you said it didn't really matter. It's what the British people want, and that's what they should have. Well, a lot of British people don't want it.
Well, sir...
Thank you. That's nice. It sounded nice, and I felt good when you said that.
Well, let me say to you, sir, that...
even better.
We joined the European Economic Community on the day I was born, the 24th of January 1972. And it has morphed...
He's
it has
younger than you,
morphed.
yeah. Sounds old, doesn't he?
It has morphed into something which is completely different to what we joined in 72 and what we voted on in 75. And what the British people were voting for is not just whether or not we should remain in the European Union, but they were extrapolating what will happen if over the next 40 years, if the pace of change is similar to what has happened over the last 45 years. And the European Union, as you know, sir, is rapidly moving towards a supranational state with a single European army, single currency, single president, single flag, and single foreign policy.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Well, Tony Blair would want to be in charge, wouldn't he?
As long as the British royal family are in charge, I think that's a jolly good idea.
Well, the British people do not want to be part of a supranational state. They want to regain their sovereignty and their independence.
Sorry, Daniel, that is just frightening. You know that's not what is going to happen. Just as a matter of interest, tell me why you think Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is a lovely man, don't get me wrong, we love him on this programme, he's entertaining, more like a stand-up comedian than a politician. Why do you think he should be the next Prime Minister? You wrote that in an article last week, I think.
Look, I'd like to, before I answer that, I'd like to say that I'm the first ever Polish-born British Member of Parliament. So I was actually born in Warsaw. And I know that countries like Poland that have concerns with the European Union, at the moment, they don't want to accept the euro. Only 15% of the Polish people support the euro, and yet the European Union is going to come after them and try to force them into the euro. This is rapidly moving towards a supranational state, and we're leaving just at the right moment. With regards to Jacob Rees-Mogg, let me say to you that I've been a member of Parliament now for 13 years, and I've come across a lot of politicians. This is a man who, in my view, uniquely has the intellect, the conviction, the character, and the courage to be a very good leader of the Conservative Party. He will put the country ahead of his own personal ambitions, which is what a lot of politicians do, unfortunately.
Okay. He, though, is a man who doesn't perhaps understand what ordinary people's lives are like. He lives a life which is detached from the norm. Do you really think he can actually empathise with those people who he would be serving?
Absolutely. I think a lot of politicians try to disguise who they really are, or they try to somehow give a false perspective to the electorate about where they've come from or who they are. Mr. Blair was a classic example of that. A highly privileged lifestyle, went to fetes, had all the attributes of a privileged lifestyle, and he tried to portray himself as being something which he wasn't. Similarly to Mr. Cameron. I don't care that Jacob Rees-Mogg has a plummy voice and wears double-breasted suits and went to Eton. And I don't think most of your listeners really care which school he went to or what sort of accent he has. What they're interested in is what does he believe in and what's the direction of travel that he wants to take our country into.
How do you feel about the way that some people have been talking about the Poles since, of course, Poland joined the European Union? A lot of people have actually put people from Poland and Romania and Hungary into the same kind of place, if you like, in their minds and been fairly vitriolic about them, which I find really strange considering what the Poles did for this country during the Second World War. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm very grateful you've asked that question. In actual fact, actually, I get a lot of very positive messages from my constituents about Poles. There are 1 million Poles now in the United Kingdom. Many of them are highly educated, skilled people. They've come here to work. They contribute to our society. They're doing things for our communities. And I'm very, very proud of the contribution they make.
A lot of them worried about Brexit. A lot of them worried about how their status in this country will be affected if Brexit continues.
Well, the Prime Minister has made it absolutely clear, and this was at the forefront of our negotiations. It's at the very fulcrum, fulcrum of our negotiations, to ensure that the 1.5 million British citizens who are living in the European Union will be protected, as will the European Union citizens who are currently here in this country, who have come here legally. They will be protected as well. And it's not just them, by the way, as you know, Mr. Whale. It's also the people who will be coming over. Sir.
Stop calling you sir.
Sir, forgive me. It will also be the people who come over during the transition period. So we will be protecting their rights, quite rightly so.